day I was in this little shop with my little sister, and she was going to buy something. She had been given a certain amount of money, done something really good, and now she was going to spend this money on buying thing X, and she couldn't find it. So I suggest to her, yo, why don't we just go to the mall? It's like a 10-minute walk. You know, you could get something really cool compared to like this little shop over here. She agrees, okay? And we set out and we're going to go to this mall. But there's a small thing that I'd forgotten on the way to this mall. Two things. The first thing was that I couldn't actually like get any transportation going to this mall because my little sister doesn't really like getting on motorbikes. Where I'm from, like people get on motorbikes to like go to places. You don't necessarily get into an Uber. And the second thing was like an Uber for a 10-minute walk. Ridiculous. The second thing that I had forgot is that this little shop I was in was like right outside my house, and I hadn't worn shoes to come to it, right? And now going to the mall, it also didn't occur to me to, wear shoes until it was a bit too late. So we set off to the mall, me barefoot. The sun is really, really hot, but there's a bit of shade as you're going there. There's a bit of shade, so you don't realize that something has gone wrong until you're like in the middle of the road, halfway there, and then I start to burn. I mean, at first I thought, how bad could it really be? Bad. I felt like my skin was just going to stay on the tarmac as I was walking. My little sister, she like fell down as we were walking on the road because she barely goes outside, and we need to work on fitness in general with the kid, right? But she falls down and she's like starting to cry and stuff like that, and I think about leaving her on the road. Like that's how much my feet are burning. It's like I could get her, but that would mean me walking a few more seconds in hell. My feet were just a swollen mess. A swollen mess. But just think about it for a second. If I had just gotten shoes, that day wouldn't have even been something to remember. Just me going to the shop with my sister, right? If I had just put on some shoes, I would have been completely fine. But because I forgot this one element, this one key element, what could have easily been fine turned into an absolute nightmare. Because I just went about it without any structure, without any thinking that it's probably going to be fine. How bad could it be? etc. Sweat, pain, suffering, death. Okay, no death, but you get the point. And that brings me to the topic of this video, which is narratives. I think this story is a perfect example of how narratives have the power to shape our experiences. Not necessarily what our experience is, but how we experience it, which is the most important thing. If you're able to take control of narratives, you have the shoes, you have the armor that protects you against the elements. So, this video is basically going to be about how you set up your narrative in your life, how you control it. And why letting your narrative be set up for you, as in not being in control of this, is a dumb idea. And it's the reason why people in a lot of situations just end up nothing, really. Because in the end, the Quran says, وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا. Whoever turns away from my remembrance, he will have a life that is empty. That's kind of what happens when you let go of your narrative. The second part of this video is going to be about how you can actually set up your narrative so that it helps you in times of your life that are harder. This is, when you're broke, this is when you're suffering some sort of illness or whatever, whatever part of your life is hard, how you can set up your narrative so that you can get through things and you can actually turn things around faster than if you were to just let it go. Okay. And the third part is going to be how you set up your narrative in the parts of your life that are good, because it's kind of like a cycle in your life. There's good parts and there's bad parts, and the good parts lead to the bad parts because, well, it's not really in your control, but usually a lot of times you'll find that a good part of your life has led to a bad part because of some things that you started doing in the good part of your life. Like, for example, you started making a lot of money and then you just thought, eventually you started to believe that this was kind of like your right and all that stuff, and you stopped working as hard and then you became broke. You see, the thing that you were doing in the good part of your life had a bad effect on the rest of your life. So how you set up your narrative in the parts of your life that are good and the parts of your life that are bad, so you can actually always keep yourself stable. Save a disaster. I mean, if a tornado hits, well, you can't control that, but in general you'll be able to move forward. That's the point. The first thing you need to realize is that there are two things that are shaping your narrative. The first happened mostly when you were a kid, and this is the beliefs and stuff that were ingrained in you from your childhood. Part of it is the environment. The environment has a very great impact, but your parents, all of this stuff, what they ingrain in you has a large impact on the trajectory of your life. So you need to look at that. Basically go through your life. I was listening to this guy, Andrew Huberman. He says that you should have a sort of journal, and for every 3-year period in your life. So let's say you're 20, right? I'm 22, right? I have 1 to 3, 3 to 5, and you kind of look at what were the main things that were notable to you in those times, so you can kind of have an idea of what is constructing your narrative during this period. Okay, because that's the first thing. The first thing is your environment, and the environment has the biggest effect when you're not really able to shape it, when you're kind of powerless. So this is when you're a kid up to teenagehood and stuff like that, before you start actually shaping how things are going to go. The second thing that shapes your narrative, you. As soon as you get to a point where you start to have some sort of free will, you're able to think for yourself and stuff like this, you start to become the shape of your narrative. So the things you do, your habits, your thoughts, all of this has an effect on where you're going in your life, and you need to make sure that you're not indirectly setting yourself on a path that you don't want to go down to. And what it is in general is kind of like the Ouroboros. It's like the snake that kind of eats itself, right? In the beginning of your life, what mostly shapes what is happening to you is your environment. But as you grow older and older, more and more it starts to become you, until the snake completely eats itself and you die. So while in the beginning of your life you can kind of blame things on certain circumstances, I was born in this place, this person did this to me, all of this stuff. The environmental changes can be blamed on other people in the beginning. As you grow older and older, it becomes more and more you. You are the driver. And that's something you need to keep in mind. In the end, when you look back at all of it, you, for most of the time, are going to have been the main driver. And in the most basic form, right, the way you make a change, the way you control your narrative, and this is controlling it in the way that you want it to go, not indirectly setting yourself down on a bad path by having addictions and all of this stuff. How you indirectly set your life in the path you want to go is by having your actions outdo your current circumstances. Okay, so in a very simple sense, right, if you were absolutely broke, you made, I don't know, let's say $1 a day, yeah, you need to like, I don't know, not eat 2 days at a time, right? So you can save, so you can, do the next thing, start a business and stuff like that. That's the level of stuff that you need to do to be able to exceed your circumstances. And the second thing that you need to consciously do is to weed out all of the stuff that's kind of setting you in the wrong direction. And this is very easy, and everybody knows how to do this. Like, for example, if you're spending too much time on social media, like right today, yesterday I'd said to myself, I'm not going to read any entertainment book because, like, this is, we're getting to the last 10 days of Ramadan. I better get serious. The first half of Ramadan, I kind of like just blew through it, right? And then what happened was I completely left the book, right? I didn't read it or anything of the sort. But for 45 minutes at like 9 o'clock when I was about to like start working, for 45 minutes I played some game on like my Android phone. So you see, that's something that's setting you out in the wrong direction. And usually I have blockers for this sort of stuff, but I haven't played games in a long time. I don't really do it that much. The last time I did was like December, so it was kind of like a blind side. You need to weed out the sorts of things like this that are going to take you in the wrong direction. And in my view, in both like sort of things, weeding out the bad things and kind of committing to make yourself outdo your circumstances, you should go slowly, because life is generally very static. You're going to be doing the same thing a lot of the time, right? I'm not saying that you shouldn't be exceptional or anything of the sort, but you want to continue to improve slowly and inerexably. Why? First, because it compounds and you're more likely to be able to keep it up, and because in life what happens is everything is very static, and then you'll have a period where things heat up, and in that period all of the things, good or bad, that exist within you will start to come out, right? So if you're always like complaining, and then somebody dies, now that just turns into a cycle where you can end up in an addiction or something of the sort. Or for example, if you're always like very forbearing and stuff like that, something bad happens to you and you can kind of lock into that and keep going forward. It's the small things that will add up in those points of your life that are like flashpoints and will take you in one or the other direction. So you want to work on yourself slowly and inerexably, not to go fast and then kind of chill or something of the sort. Just keep going continuously. And then there are three main things that you need to watch. The first is your speech and what you hear. Nobody really needs a speech about like, you should watch what you say. Saying the wrong thing at the wrong time is probably going to end up like super bad. Everybody has sort of awareness about this. But the other thing is what you hear. What you hear is like something that really affects people that I don't think people talk much about. And basically, if you want to be X, but all of the inputs that you're getting, kind of are leading you into a sort of direction that's different, then it's very hard for you to reconcile that, and you usually end up in the middle or going one of the ways, right? So the early Muslims, because they were living in Mecca and there were people who weren't Muslim around them, right? Allah said to them in the Quran that if you see people making fun of the religion because people of Quraysh would like talk about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in kind of derogatory terms, right? If you see people making fun of their religion, right, leave them and do not sit with them when they are talking about that stuff. Okay, that's paraphrasing the ayah, but you get the point. Don't listen to things that are against the direction that you want to go. And as a Muslim, that involves like things like lagh, talking, people who talk about other people. Like there's this guy on YouTube I see, he just basically does like gossip on celebrities, that sort of thing. That's low. You keep away from the things that you don't need to be hearing, considering the direction that you're kind of going to go in. Because these things kind of shape and can corrupt you. Okay. The second thing you need to watch out for in terms of shaping a narrative, right, is your thoughts. And this is specifically talking about the thoughts that you have where you feel like your current state is not what you want to be. So for example, I was watching yesterday, I was watching a YouTuber called Lana Deep. She's like a Palestinian American YouTuber. She moved to New York, right? And it hit me. She's 23 years old. I'm 23 years old. I'm 22 years old, right? And I live with my parents. You see, and I kind of felt bad in my heart. I felt like, yo, this chick is 1 year older than me and she's already here, and I'm just like, what's going on, right? That's the sort of thing that you need to watch against. You need to guard yourself against that sort of thought, because whatever has happened to you was not going to have missed you. There's a hadith about this. What has hit you would not have missed you, and what has missed you would never have hit you. If you're in a certain situation, that is the situation you are destined to be, right? If you want that situation to change, you can want it to change, but you cannot start thinking that like this is wrong. Understand? Because this sort of thinking does nothing for you. It can only lead to bitterness and all of this stuff. And usually, all it does is kind of, precipitates in your heart these like bad feelings, and then you end up lashing out at people for something that has nothing to do with them. But you're now looking to blame circumstances for the reason why you aren't in the situation that you have decided that you should be in, when nobody told you that you should be in that situation. You just thought it up in your head, you want to be this, and the fact that you're now taking it out on other people is it's a futile cycle. And then the third thing in terms of shaping a narrative that you need to watch over is your actions. I was watching this video about this guy who watched John Wick. There was this like latest John Wick, and there was a French villain, okay? And the French villain was like standing next to a window. He said, "How you do everything is how you do anything is how you do everything," in a French accent. And it rang true for the guy in the video, right? And it also kind of rings true in like life, because as I said before, right? In life, everything is static, but then you end up with flashpoints, and the flashpoints kind of go either in a really good way or they go in a really bad way. But how you react in the flashpoints, what determines whether or not the flashpoints are good or bad, is dependent on these little things that you do on a daily basis. So if you're doing like the basic things right or wrong, that leads to you doing the greater things right or wrong as well. That's basically how it works. So you need to watch over these little things, the littlest things in your life, very carefully. The Prophet ﷺ says that, a person will do little sins until they gather up and they destroy him. And this is what we're talking about. How you do everything. How you do anything is how you do everything. Literally. And you need to treat it as such. So those are the main things, right? Now, how you see the future. There are two main ways you're going to be looking at the future. Perspectives, right? The first perspective is you're in a place where things are kind of difficult, and the second one is where things are kind of good. Okay? When you're in a position in your life where things are like difficult, then you should be looking at the future in the most optimistic way possible. And let me give you an example of how this works, because it might be a little bit like vague, right? I was reading this book, The End and the Death, I think it was called. I'm not sure. Maybe it was The Siege of Terror, but basically there was a siege. In the siege, some people got locked out of the walls. Some of the defenders got locked out of the walls of the final fortress and were left out there with the enemy. Okay? And the enemy are like demons and madmen and all of this stuff. So you're being left out of the walls just to face horrors, right? The normal person, okay, personally, when I kind of like was reading this part, it's like, oh, those guys are kind of hopeless. They should start like, giving up and stuff, or make some suicidal charge, right? But the narrative that the people who had been locked out took was that they were lifesavers, as in they have been selected to take the highest price in terms of enemy lives for their lives. So there was one guy who killed 45 people, right, of the enemy after he had been locked out. He was like, yo, that's not enough. But you see, in a really bleak situation, these guys are definitely going to die. There's no happy ever after. The plant has also been destroyed. The plant, they've all been completely destroyed. These people are going to die. But because they looked at it from this perspective, that they're selling their lives for a certain price, they completely turned it around. And people who, instead of being the norm, which would be, just to give up at that point, like what's even the point, or just, kind of have a kind of like a last stand. These guys who got locked out of the walls started forming raiding parties and were harrowing the people who were besieging them from outside the walls with no support. You see? Normally these people would just have died, but because they chose this kind of like perspective to look at their thing from, then they were able to do a lot more. They were able to get a lot more done. So when things in your life are kind of like bleak, be optimistic and know that Allah has promised you better days. Better days here, better days afterwards, as long as you keep your head straight and keep going. Okay? Now, when things are good, caution. not the Prophet when the Muslims had won at the Battle of Badr. Okay, this was the first battle that the Muslims fought against Quraysh, which were the tribe who were kind of like harrying them while they were still in Mecca. All of the ayats that came down, and I don't exactly remember what the ayats were, and I don't have time to like go look for them because I said I would finish this video in like 10 days, and now I'm doing most of the work on the last day. You know, I'm a work in progress. All of the ayat that were revealed after that were criticizing everything that the Muslims had done. This was their first battle. They had won, you know, and they had won against a force that was 3 times their size. So it wasn't just a victory, it was like a huge victory. And they won, and they weren't even planning to fight in the beginning. They were just going to like raid a caravan, and then they found like a whole army in front of them, and they still won. You know, usually in that like case you think, you know, but the Quran was revealing ayahs about like what they did, and it was just nitpicking on every single thing that they did. First of all, like the Quran didn't like the way they had dealt with the prisoners. Allah said to them that the reason why they won was actually because the angels had been sent down to fight with them, and it wasn't because of the stuff they were doing, you know, and all of this stuff. And it kind of highlights a point in my mind that when you win, right, the instinct is to think that this is because of your skill or whatever and stuff like that. But in reality, there is a huge amount of luck that goes into these things, and you need to not discount that. Because if you just look at it like you've won because of your abilities and stuff like that, it leads to arrogance, and arrogance leads to complacency, and complacency leads to bad times. So there's a balance to be had. In good times, caution. Bad times, optimism. That's basically how you